My wife cheated with her boss and suggested we open our marriage, but had second thoughts once I developed feelings for another woman. Never once did I think I would get to this point, to the point of reaching out to strangers on the internet for guidance. But here we are. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, but married for 8. We met at college and were each other's first and only. As a result, I truly believed we had a one-of-a-kind and beautiful relationship. But it appears that it was only me. My wife recently started a new job at a different company. She initially struggled to fit in because she has always been reserved. But with my encouragement, she became friends with a group of girls, some of whom were single, divorced, or dating, but not married. I was pleased at first that she had made friends, but then she began going out for drinks, parties, and other activities planned by her friends. I became concerned about her change in behavior and attempted to speak with her about it, but I didn't want to restrict her in any way. It began to have an effect on our sexual relationship. My wife was not one to initiate intimacy, but with her frequent outings, she was either too tired or not in the mood. Her company eventually hired a new manager, who both my wife and her friends admired. She started mentioning him in passing, but eventually she pointed out how he handled problems that didn't appear to be work-related. I questioned her about her fascination with this man, and she dismissed my concerns. She even asked if I regretted not having more experience with women, to which I replied that she was all I ever needed. I swear I thought I saw a flash of sadness in her eyes, but she quickly changed the subject. She began mentioning open marriages as a way to spice things up in our marriage. I was taken aback because my wife was never this type of person and was not particularly liberal sexually. To be honest, I initially refused and asked if this had anything to do with the new manager, which she denied but said she felt left out. But he did not want to lose me. So this was the safer option. I warned her that she was playing with fire, and she reluctantly and naively agreed. So we established some ground rules, the most important of which was not to sleep with another person in our home for a year. My wife goes on dates and has one-night stands. Then, as if I didn't see it coming, he developed some sort of relationship with that manager. I, on the other hand, had a few dates, but no one-night stands because it just didn't feel right. My wife would ask if I was okay, but would not change her behavior. At some point, I felt my love for her. That pure, special innocence of marriage had vanished, and it was destroying me inside. I ended up going on a date with a wonderful woman who had migrated from South Korea. Conversation was effortless. She had the wit of a lightning-fast whip crack and a smile that made you forget yourself. This, of course, led to additional dates until we became intimate. I've honestly never had sex like I did with this woman. I never imagined a woman could be so generous and make you feel so desirable. My wife initially thought it was cute, but as the months passed, she began to question my relationship with my lover. I quickly pointed out that this was her idea, and that she was also in a relationship with the manager. I was concerned. She was silent. She appeared to be about to say something, but chose to remain silent. She started coming home early to surprise me with dinner and make the house extra clean. She also started dropping off lunch at my workplace and initiating intimacy in the bedroom. To be honest, if it hadn't been for her opening up about our marriage, which I share responsibility for, I would have been overjoyed. I rarely gave in to her attempts at intimacy, and when I did, it was only to get it over with. Something inside of me died for my wife, and I could tell she felt the same way. I inquired about what caused the change and what was different. The response I received was that she wants to show me that she loves and is content with me. I never meant to, but I burst out laughing. I inquired about her small circle of friends, her manager lover, and her one-night stands. She did not respond that day, and instead went to bed in tears. The next day, I returned home to find her waiting for me. She told me she wants to end the marriage and that the entire experience was a terrible mistake. She regrets everything and wants us to be the center of our relationship again. I told her to be honest with me and tell me what motivated all of this in the first place. Wouldn't quote, you know it? Her friends planted the idea because of their numerous sexual exploits, and when her manager came around, he surprised my wife by supporting the lifestyle and encouraging her to live freely. Apparently, it began as an emotional affair, but became physical once the marriage was established. That makes things better. She described it as driving drunk in a speeding car. It was exciting and intoxicating, but the cost of this decision has become too high for her to bear. She now realizes that she never needed a comparison because what we had was truly unique and special. But now she feels as if she ruined our marriage and any chance of a future together. When I told her that I might never see her as my wife again, she burst into tears in front of me. I simply held her in silence while she cried, and she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. She has since quit her job, severed ties with all of her friends and her manager, and even stated that she is willing to spend the rest of her life making amends to me and working her fingers to the bone in order to be considered a wife by me. But I haven't stopped communicating with my lover. To be honest, my lover makes me feel manly, as if I could challenge the world. And my wife hasn't in a while. The truth is that I don't know what to do in this situation. I'd like to rekindle the special feeling, but my lover literally saved me when I was at my lowest point. Please help me. I forgot to add. We have our first marriage counseling session in a few hours. I'm not sure how that will go. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect such a response. Thank you so much for your support and advice. I'll post an update on our therapy session because, frankly, that requires its own thread. But I will answer a few questions. My lover is unmarried, but she believes in open marriages. My intentions for this marriage are still unclear. Mainly because, as much as I love my wife, I don't trust her yet. At the same time, our years together have made it difficult for me to truly let go. And the reason I agreed to counseling sessions was to see if I could reach a decision with a clear mind and get off the indecisive train. I didn't demand her phone at first because I didn't want to see a photo of my wife with another man. The mental images and movies were bad enough, but seeing the actual picture would have shattered me even more. I forgot to mention that this morning, as I was getting out of the shower, I noticed my wife holding my phone and shaking silently as she read a message I'd received. I took it from her without saying anything. The message came from my lover. It said, "Good morning, handsome. I slept in your t-shirt last night because I miss falling asleep and waking up in your arms. I miss greeting each new day with a kiss from you. I believe this has messed up my wife, as she has been shadowing me for the past 2 hours. Even when I went for a jog, she never joined me. Not once during our entire relationship. I met my lover one evening while my wife was on a date. I was walking out of a bookstore where I spent the majority of my evenings when this whole fiasco began. She, my lover, was being pursued by a short, beefy man yelling at her, and when I saw him grab her arm and violently turn her around, I unconsciously intervened. I practiced judo, but it wasn't anything spectacular. I was able to restrain him, but it resulted in an accidental wrist dislocation. It turns out she fired him for sexual harassment, which he did not take well. After that, she insisted on buying me coffee as a thank you, which I accepted. When it came to the open marriage, she was initially hesitant. She was adamant about not being a homewrecker, but once she learned the full extent of my wife's actions from me, she threw caution to the wind. You have 2 options for stories to tell your grandchildren. Either I saved your grandmother from a black card and she fell into my arms, or she took a year off to experiment with various things. And I was completely fine with that. Update 1. The therapist appeared friendly and experienced. Despite the fact that this was our first session, she appeared objective and eager to help. My wife saw it as an opportunity to lay everything out. She appears to have confessed that this group of friends made her wonder if she had passed up an opportunity because she was committed to her first boyfriend and had no other experiences, that she had never had. The same adventures. Some of these supposedly amazing women remembered, and while some were divorced, none were married. The therapist pointed out that this can be, and frequently is, harmful to a marriage due to a difference in mindset. My wife appeared to agree, and she went on to say that after the new manager approached her, some of her friends encouraged her to see where it went, and that this was an opportunity for her to discover herself. She obviously felt guilty, she claims. So she never did anything physical until one of the divorced suggested open marriage as a way out, telling her that some couples emerge stronger as a result. So, regrettably, again. So she claims that after convincing me to open up the marriage, her so-called adventure began. It was intoxicating and blinding, but lacked substance. not like the ones we've built over the years. And she began to question her motivations for doing this. She admitted she could see the pain in my eyes, but she told herself it was an adventure. She said she would never forgive herself for this. She had the opportunity to have an incredible experience, so the gravity of it all didn't sink in until she noticed a change in me. She assumed that because I went on dates, I would eventually accept her situation and be fine with it. But everything changed when my lover made a regular appearance in my adventure. Apparently, I began to smile again for no reason, and my eyes would light up when I received a text message after cheerfully leaving the room to answer a phone call. She stated that she suddenly felt a pit in her stomach and began experiencing frequent panic attacks for no apparent reason. She went back to her friends for advice, but they said it was normal for me to have this reaction during the adventure. But when the same divorced woman who suggested it in the first place said it appears that his lover makes him happy, the reality of it all dawned on her, and the very real possibility that another woman, not his wife, brought him joy nearly knocked her out. She realized how ridiculous everything was and begged them to help her get me back. But they simply told her that if she couldn't deal with it, she shouldn't have started her marriage. She knew right away that these people were toxic and posed a threat to our marriage and the life we had built. As a result, she's been on a mission to win me back through any means necessary. On the other hand, didn't say much. But I did tell the counselor about my situation with my lover still in the picture, to which the counselor responded that no resolution could ever be reached with my lover still in the picture, and suggested we schedule another appointment after tomorrow. The counselor did mention that it was unusual for someone to stay with their first for so long, but he also gave the impression that any storm could be weathered. I strongly suspect she wants us to be one of her success stories. Sorry for the lengthy post, but I figured I should provide a full update. Edit. As I previously stated, my lover makes me feel like a man. What I mean is that after a difficult day, I am greeted with a warm hug and a listening ear, not cold indifference. When my insecurities arise, she reminds me that nothing is beyond my reach. More than anything, I apologize if this sounds sexist. She gives me the freedom to be the man in our relationship. My lover believes that women were created to do things that men are incapable of doing. Again, I believe this has to do with her culture. She believes men are less nurturing and compassionate than women. So, in her opinion, a gentle heart can calm a raging volcano, a Korean proverb saying or something. She believes she should rule and make the bedroom exciting, but she should never belittle me or infringe on my personal space in other areas. She believes men have far fewer needs than women, and once these are met, the man will essentially slay the dragon for the woman. I must add that she believes in equal pay and mutual respect, but not to the extremes that many people take these days. As I previously stated, it may appear sexist, but I believe this is due in large part to her cultural attitudes. As I previously stated, my lover makes me feel more masculine. I'm assuming you're in the West, where there are very few women who will gladly do this for you. After years of dealing with the other kind, I finally found one. So I understand what I'm talking about. You're talking about 1% of the most in-demand women, and you've landed one. Now, let's talk briefly about your wife. She was a woman who got everything she wanted in life. But eventually, she let an outsider tell her, "Here quotes why you should put the person who is passionate about you, your one and only, on the shelf and open all of your holes." For a guy who doesn't give a crap about you but really wants to. This sounds like what you're doing with your wife and lover right now. Are you determined to be just like your wife? Will you take a girl who only wants you and leave her hanging out to dry? Because you have a preconceived notion of who your wife was in your past and will abandon a loving girl for someone who is married to you. To check the got married box between affairs. If you are determined to be like your wife, stay with her. Here's a warning. Your wife is only interested in you now because you are attractive. Because another girl wishes to steal you. That will not last. After you've dropped Korea, girl, you'll be back at square one. When that happens, you will have lost both your wife and your career partner, because a woman who can make a man feel like a man is highly desirable. Then, you'll be back on here. Update 2. Thank you to everyone who reached out. I apologize for not being able to respond to each and every one of you. whether through the inbox or the post. Anyway, here's an update so far. Thank you again for your support. It's literally been a Jerry Springer episode. I've since moved into an apartment owned by my brother at a ridiculously low price. He owns properties and offered to let me stay for free, but I refused. Just a few things I've discovered about my wife's behavior, as well as some unsettling facts about her manager, during the second session of counseling. I asked some of the questions that some Redditors asked, including whether she was certain. Nothing physical occurred prior to the start of the marriage. She looked to the ground and begged me not to make her say it. She stated that if she said it, it would destroy us, but after some prodding, she admitted that it wasn't physical, but they touched themselves in front of each other. This douchebag convinced her that because it wasn't physical, it wasn't technically cheating, and that they were simply admiring each other's full beauty. I was completely taken aback, and she began shaking and hyperventilating. Snot began to flow from her nostrils as she cried and apologized to me. Even the counselor was taken aback and gave a look of disbelief. My wife got down on her knees and hugged my legs, saying she was sorry. I then asked her what had changed her opinion of him. She claimed that once she began to distance herself from the group as a whole, his behavior toward her changed. Then one evening, as she was leaving a meeting, she passed by his office and overheard him talking about her to another male colleague. He expressed surprise at how easy it was to get her and how she lives. Proof that you shouldn't trust the quiet ones. When a colleague asked if he liked her, his response was that she was a pleasant distraction, and he had no intention of ending his relationship with his fiancée. He even admitted that he was doing this to get it off his chest because his fiancée was the only woman who had ever understood him, and he didn't want to end his relationship. He also mentioned that he felt sorry for me, but you snooze, you lose. My wife, upon realizing that she was nothing more than a piece of meat to this man, combined with the fact that she betrayed me for a cheap thrill, made herself sick in that moment. She stated that she left her workplace and vomited in the parking lot. She also mentioned that her first thought was, "What have I done? Please forgive me. My name is... I'm very sorry." 3. I asked her if she loved him and when she had stopped loving me. She looked me dead in the eyes through tears and said she would never stop loving me, which only made things worse. And that he was simply different. She thought it was love, but she now sees how foolish that was. She squeezed my arm with surprising strength, saying she knows she messed up, but she misses us and the connection we had before everything happened. She even suggested we move away and start over. It's just the two of us. Everything happened exactly as it should have. I then told her it wouldn't be fair to my lover and that I needed time away from her to process everything. She appeared to have had a meltdown when she heard those words. She began sobbing harder and saying incoherent things. She clung to me as if I were going to vanish. It took some time for both myself and the counselor to calm her down. The counselor persuaded her that they might need some time apart, could help us heal. Now, I wish I could end the update here, but as soon as we got home, I started packing. My wife received a video call from her laptop. Her former friend was in tears. After my wife resigned, this friend and the manager started a fling of their own. But apparently, she had a pregnancy scare, which caused him to transform into Dr. Jekyll. To make matters worse, she had a boyfriend with whom she apparently saw a future, and the only reason she had a fling was out of curiosity. It's funny how that appears to be a trend. Her boyfriend found out after discovering an email between the two discussing the possibility of a pregnancy, but the manager accused her of baby-trapping him. Of course, he abandoned her, and she contacted me because she thought my wife had saved our marriage and was desperately seeking advice. I just turned left and have been staying in the apartment ever since. Thank you again for your thoughts and helpful advice. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who reached out and offered helpful advice. Your own similar life story, or simply providing an ear for me to vent. It really means a lot. Well, a lot has happened. The former friend who had the pregnancy scare was actually pregnant, but the stress of losing her boyfriend and being humiliated by the affair caused her to lose the baby. When she unleashed full throttle on the manager, she went completely insane. She exposed him to all of upper management and his fiancée. I happened to discover his fiancée on Facebook. Was curious. And this woman is essentially the poster child for a typical small-town girl. According to her profile, she is a special needs teacher who enjoys staying at home and spending time with her family. My first thought was, what the hell is he doing messing around with other women when she's at home? Honestly, how come men like him end up with women like her? It is one of life's great mysteries. The former friend actually contacted me. She wanted my version of the events because she was gathering evidence against him, but she preferred to do it in person. She had already had her COVID test, as did I, and we agreed. From the moment I saw her face, I knew she was broken. The dark circles under her eyes and her red irises clearly indicated that she had not slept and was haunted by her own thoughts. She thanked me for agreeing to meet with her and immediately apologized for her involvement in my wife's adventure. It turns out she and my wife spoke again, and that's when she discovered I'd moved out. She did not blame shift and wanted to accept responsibility, which is why she wanted to meet in person. I thanked her for her efforts, but questioned why she would go so far. She claimed that losing both a child and the love of her life fundamentally altered her personality. She claims she can't look in the mirror without feeling disgusted, and she can't sleep because all she sees is her ex's face the day he found out. This woman obviously despised herself, and this meeting could have been a form of punishment for her. She tells me that fraternizing among coworkers is a breach of conduct, especially since he was in a position of influence. He will most likely be fired and blacklisted from the field as a whole. However, this may also be true for her. And she's accepted it. She left after hearing my side of the story and apologized again. I needed to get a few things from the old place, so I chose a time when I assumed my wife was not home. Unfortunately, she was present. But what surprised me was that she had most of our wedding photos on the coffee table, along with others, and she was staring at them when she noticed me. I could see her crying. She attempted to hug me, but I gently pushed her away. She offered me lunch, but I declined, saying I wasn't hungry and wouldn't be there long. I just needed a few things before I could proceed. She mentioned that she had something to show me. She took out her phone and showed me a message she received 2 days ago from her former manager, who chastised her. It was from a new number because she had blocked his previous one. Apparently, my wife helped her former friend expose him to all relevant parties, and he was furious. She claimed she got the idea from Chump Lady and Marriage Builders. She believed that by revealing the secret, she would remove its power while also giving us a fighting chance. I told her that while I was glad she had the courage to do so, it made no difference in our relationship. I also informed her that I will no longer be providing marriage counseling and that we will instead conduct individual counseling. This made her sob softly, and she expressed her understanding. I know I'm supposed to feel relief from the actions taken or rage because it took so long, but I'm numb to her. This is not normal. This is why I want to address it in individual counseling rather than marriage counseling. I also saw a divorce lawyer on my brother's recommendation just to be safe. As of now, I am not willing to fight for this marriage, and it appears that my wife can sense it. Before I left, she attempted to initiate intimacy, but when I declined, she yelled and asked, "What does my lover do for me that she cannot? What does my lover offer me that she cannot?" She spoke in a very loud voice. I'm sure the neighbors heard it and told me that whatever I wanted, my wife would do it. I shook my head and told her that if she couldn't tell after everything that had happened, it was obvious where our marriage was going, and I left.